may she be a vessel through which your word will pass through, and your children will get the message in your own voice, Father. For this our humble prayer, trusting and believing in Jesus' name we pray and believe. Amen. Hamjambo. Bwana asifiwe. Tunakaribisha sister wetu Pastor Naomi to come and speak to the God's children this evening. How many welcome our pastor? Pastor, you are very much welcome. Karibu sana.
Well, we want to thank God for this blessed Sabbath. We want to thank God for the sweet hour of prayer. And I want to welcome you for today's sharing, which is a continuation of where we left during the midweek prayers on Wednesday, where we had an opportunity to study from Genesis chapter 22 verse 1, and we only tackled the first statement in that verse that states, "And it came to pass after these things." So now we want to continue. I want to condense the rest of the series into one series, which I'll do now. That is from verse 2 to verse 11. So I want to welcome you. And before I read the word, I would love to pray. So let's bow for a word of prayer. Our dear Father, we want to thank you for the blessings of the Sabbath. We want to thank you for this sacred moment that we can study from your word. And Lord, we ask that even as we open your word, may you open our hearts. Father, may you open our understanding. Help us to grasp so well what you want to speak to us today. So use me and speak to me, and through me, may we get to know your will. And we ask this trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen. So we got to know what things were spoken of just before we could be introduced to what was in chapter 22. And we saw the blunders Abraham had made in previous tests that the Lord had put before him. And now we want to see of the grand test now. We want to see of the greatest trial he ever faced, which came from none other but his closest friend, whom he had worked with for quite some time. We saw how it really takes time to build a good character, and we saw how that we should not be discouraged. We should not lose our focus. Why? Because although we may seem to have failed, although we may have made mistakes, we know God is working in us, and he has promised to accomplish that which he has started in us, that which he began when we first believed. So I want to welcome you to what follows after that. We saw those things. Because verse 1 says, "And it came to pass after these things." So just in case you missed, it is there in the presentation I made on Wednesday during the midweek prayers. We got to see some of the things spoken of. So now after those things, after the blunders, the mistakes made by Abraham, after the tests he had overcame, after the tests he was able to fare so well, whereby God had proved to see that And that's why we read what follows there is that after these things, God did tempt Abraham to him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thy only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place which God had told him. Then on the third day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place far off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. Now, the word used there, God did tempt Abraham. Other versions will tell you God tested him. The Hebrew version is Nisa. The Hebrew term for that word tempt or test there is Nisa. And the word has been used severally in the Old Testament, more than 30 times, to imply one, that to show, to mean, to prove, or to try, or to test. It has also been used elsewhere to mean presumptuous, when it is now man trying to compel God to act according to the man's proposals. But here in Genesis chapter 22, the verse has been used to imply testing. It is God testing Abraham. He had to test him to prove Abraham's commitment and to test Abraham's love for God. So the word there, testing Abraham, means to prove or to try, to test. And so, the word is the same word used in 2 Chronicles, that 2, that 1, when God had to test King Hezekiah. And it is also used even in 1 Kings 10, verse 1, whereby we see the Queen of Sheba testing King Solomon with hard questions to prove of the wisdom which she had heard of. So now you know that God was testing Abraham. Well, elsewhere, the same word Nisa there, Hebrew, can mean to tempt, with evil intentions, to lead to evil. But for Abraham's case, now we know God was proving him. He was trying to test his commitment. And so we know the test there, that Abraham had to go and offer his only son, Isaac. You realize what follows there is God is saying, Take now thy only son. Yes, thy son, Isaac. And so now we know sometimes some things God allows in our lives, or it is clear now that God can test us, and that not all troubles we find ourselves in are brought to us by the devil. As we know from Abraham that some of them it is God who allows. He does it, it is his doing, and he does so with a good intention to shape us, to prove us, to test us, to see that we really love him. And it is good news for Abraham, because Abraham had walked with God and he had learned to trust in God. So he was able to discover, yes, Abraham had been, sometimes he had failed. We saw he made blunders, yes, and God was patient. But although God is patient, sometimes he wants us to go to another level. Although he is patient with our mistakes, he doesn't want us to remain stagnated or in our complacency. He wants to take us to another level. And that's why when it came for this test, now your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and sacrifice him. So sometimes we will be required to act without delays. We will be required to not say but. We would be required to not, there won't be room for even consulting. As you will find here is that Abraham had no time to consult even with Sarah, not even with Isaac. Abraham was to arise that very time and go to Mount Moriah. It was going to take him some days, but he had to act that very time. It was a test that Abraham was to face alone. And this is to tell us that sometimes, although we might have families or companies we want to keep, some tests we want to face alone. And we want to be like Abraham and shine for God. When it is your time, sometimes it will just be you who sees or who hears and servants to stay there, and that he was to go with Isaac and worship, and he assured them that he was willing to go and sacrifice Isaac. We know it is hard. It must have been very hard for Abraham. Who would love to kill his left some years ago. So it was only Isaac there, and Abraham knew that even he could have, instead of Isaac, he would have thought of maybe sacrificing Ishmael instead of Isaac, but he knew what God's request was, and it was a moment he must have mourned even before he could do that. The Bible says elsewhere that you read in Hebrews 11, by the way, you'll see that it says he sacrificed him. Well, through faith, he had already sacrificed him, by the way. So he was so much willing. And he had learned to trust in God, to say to Isaac that God was. Abraham didn't hesitate. He told him that God was going to provide. And we thank God because he's so faithful. He's always going to provide. He provided a ram when Abraham was almost sacrificing. I love Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17. Allow me read. We will see what the father of the faithful was able to do by faith. And this we can also do. So we should not be discouraged. We know it takes time, and we know that God who began that good work in us, he is working in us to build. Now allow me read verse 17. It says, by faith Abraham, when he was tried, he offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son. So Hebrews says he offered up his son. Why? You read verse 17, verse 18, it says, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, and counting that God was able to raise him up,